Good morning. My name is Sebastian Marie. I'm in the 10th grade, and I'll be presenting my English 10 and Modern World History POLs. This semester, we were assigned to read the book Fahrenheit 451 and pick a character and analyze and characterize that character. And I picked Captain Beatty. Now for my thesis statement. Captain Beatty is a very complex character. His job is to burn books, and yet he knows so much about them. It seems that he was once passionate about books, but now has a hatred for them. So what I'm saying in this thesis is that when someone has a passion or an interest for something, and then the transition happens or something occurs, and then you kind of lose that passion or have a hatred for them, that's called disillusion. And my evidence will be focusing on the disillusion that Captain Beatty goes through in this book. And now for my evidence for this slide. Don't give them any slippery stuff like philosophy or sociology to tie things up with. Any man who can take a TV wall apart and put it back together again, and most of them can nowadays, are happier than any man who tries to slide, rule, measure, and equate the universe, which just won't be measured or equated without making a man feel bestyled and lonely. I know, I've tried to help it. So what Captain Beatty is saying here is that when you're exposed to, or when you're given something like philosophy or sociology, you kind of start to questioning things. And what he started doing was trying to understand the universe. He wanted to know what it was about, and he was actually curious about this. And he states that the only outcome that he went through trying to decipher the universe was he experienced loneliness, and it wasn't what he wanted to experience. And he's saying that he just stuck with what other people were doing, which was taking apart TVs and following the rules. He wasn't supposed to kind of get outside the box and try to answer this question, which is kind of a big question, trying to decipher the universe. Oh, and this would be showing that at one point he was trying to decipher the universe, and now he's lonely. So the next slides will be showing about how he became passionate about these books, and then the last slide will be showing why he had this hatred for books. So now my second evidence. I'll tell you, said Beatty, smiling at his cards. Read a few lines and off you go over the cliff. Bang, you're ready to blow up the world, chop off heads, knock down women and children, destroy authority. I know, I've been through it all. So what Captain Beatty is saying here is that once you're exposed to a book, or you read a few lines of a book, you start to feel like you can do these unimaginable things. You get a false sense of reality, as in blowing up the world. And this relates to him trying to decipher the universe, because that's also kind of an unthinkable thing. No one can just do that. So where he got this idea of deciphering the universe came from literature, and this is how he became so curious and obsessed with books. On this piece of evidence, Captain Beatty says, well, Montag, take my word for it. I've had to read a few in my time. To know what I was about, and the books say nothing. Nothing you can teach or believe. They're non-existent people, figments of imagination. So this is referring to what he felt when he was trying. This is showing the second stage of his feelings, his hatred, because he's trying to decipher the universe, led him to becoming lonely, and which led him to believing that literature is lies. It didn't answer his question, that this books didn't give him what he wanted. So he's saying that they're nothing you can teach or believe, so they're pretty much lies, and they're non-existent people, figments of imagination. So he started to realize that what the books had done to him, that they gave him this false sense of imagination, and this is really what built up towards his hatred of books in Fahrenheit 451. Now I'll be presenting my Modern World History POL on Essential Skill 3, the Industrial Revolution. Now for my Essential Skill thesis statement, I wrote, the Industrial Revolution had a large effect on the world socially and economically. The Industrial Revolution formed labor unions that protested for better working conditions. Drastic changes occurred to the product manufacturing industries. Lastly, the Industrial Revolution affected cities that caused them to expand. So for my first piece of evidence, I got this for my opening on December 1st, 2014, and it states, blank developed out of the Industrial Revolution from poor working conditions and low wages. Now the answer to this question would be labor unions. And the reason why labor unions were formed is because during the Industrial Revolution, factories would be using heavy machinery that was really dangerous, and the working environment was not sanitary. So what people were doing, they were getting hurt from the machines, even dying. They'd be getting infections from how machines in the area were just really unclean, and they're working long hours and very low wages. So what these people did, they got together and they kind of boycotted working, and they started protesting. And in their protests, they were saying that, we'll get back to work, but you have to change this, this, and this. You have to give us better wages, more reasonable hours, and some sort of medical. When someone gets hurt, they should get some sort of benefit, something that can help them to continue living. And that's what they did. So they would protest until the owners of the factories or the people who were high up in these industries would hear them out and then give them what they wanted. Now for my second piece of evidence, this is from my DBQ 2.1, DBQ 1. It states, I have seen a small manufactory, so a factory of this kind where men only were employed, and some of them performed 2 or 3 distinct operations. They could make among them upwards to 48,000 pins in a day. But if they had all worked separately and independently, they certainly would not have made even 20 in a day. So what this is saying is that in factories, you have multiple people working on the same products. So for example, if it were a pin, you would have one person coloring the pin, one person shaping the pin, one person making the hole so it can be attached to a t-shirt. And each person had a specific role, so they had one skill. And it's much easier to get used to doing one skill, and which allowed them to create more product because it became faster. And that way, with all these people doing these jobs, they were able to produce 48,000 pins. But if it was one person making the entire pin, he would have to have all of those skills, and he would have to shape the pin, color it, and do all the jobs that in a factory one person would do each part of it. And so that would take much more time, and they probably wouldn't make more than 20 in a day. Now for this piece of evidence, this is showing urbanization. So in the picture above, this is Manchester in 1750, and below it is Manchester in 1850. So you can see within 100 years that the city has expanded drastically. And the reasons for this is that, for example, a city, Manchester, would have a factory. A factory would be built inside the city. And what factories do, they provide jobs and provide lots of jobs for people who are looking for work. And what would happen is that people would hear about this factory in Manchester and they would come to Manchester to work. And more factories were built up, more people would come, and the city would expand. They would create transportation to other cities so you can get back and forth between areas quicker. And also the houses to accommodate more people so more people could live there. But even with this huge expansion in housing, this still wasn't enough to house everyone who was in Manchester. So there was cramped living, lots of homeless people, and diseases from the cramped living because it wasn't too sanitary. I guess the factories would also be polluting the area. Now onto my last slide. So the Industrial Revolution had many contributions to the age of imperialism, and this is my paragraph on this. The Industrial Revolution contributed to the age of imperialism in many ways. Due to the rise in product manufacturing, factories were making more products than they could sell. During the Industrial Revolution, factories were using up tons of their natural resources. So what I'm saying here is that with all these factories, they were creating so many products that you needed a wider range of people to sell to. So they would come up with the idea, okay, so we should go to Africa, we should go to China, and we should sell our products to them so we can make more money and not just sell to the people that live around us or in America. And also, what factories would be doing, that they would be using lots of their natural resources. They would be using all of their cotton, they would be using all their fabrics, all their materials. So they had to go to other countries and use their materials, their natural resources. And after that, they used metals. They had to get metals from Japan, China, Africa. So they were using other people's natural resources because we were using all of ours. And this is